If you were a dictator, would you be a benevolent or a malevolent one? Chamath Palihapitiya, referred to as the Dictator by his close circle bestie friends, exhibits both sides. He is the guy who calls himself king of SPACs and lost millions of investor money.
Is a big underperformer, an SEC investigation weighing on that stock, down more than 40% this year.
The guy who doesn't give a about Uyghurs in China.
Nobody cares about. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line.
But he's also the guy who warns us about the effects of social media.
We get rewarded in these short-term signals, hearts, likes, thumbs up, and we conflate that with value and we conflate it with truth. And instead what it really is fake, brittle popularity.
And the guy who shamelessly calls out the entire venture capital landscape in public.
Venture is basically just a bunch of soulless cowards.
In this video, which is sponsored by the Daily Upside, so shout out to the Daily Upside, a free business and investing newsletter, we are going to take a look at one of my personal role models, the meteoric rise and let's call it dip of the one and only Chamath Palihapitiya and what we can learn from it. When I heard about Chamath's story a long time ago, I thought to myself, interesting. Either the guy is lucky as hell or, less probable, a godlike genius.
I try some stuff, it doesn't work. I try some other stuff, it kind of works. Generally, it's kind of worked out.
I always thought luck is a concept created by betas to explain their failures, so I decided to dig deeper. He was born as a Sri Lankan to Sri Lankan parents in Sri Lanka and moved to Canada at age 5. Chamath came from a modest background of poverty. As a child, he worked at Burger King to generate cash flow for the family.
I would be so ashamed that I worked at Burger King.
He did the math and figured this business model lacked scalability and wouldn't let him start a fund in the near future. So he decided to enroll at the University of Waterloo, studying electrical engineering. After graduating in 1999, Chamath had a short stint in derivatives trading. He summed up his experience quite eloquently.
Probably the most insipid, idiotic use of my time. And the biggest thing that I realized was that bankers are like smart enough to be greedy, but not smart enough to be useful.
He sent out some applications and found his way to Winamp. That is where events started taking shape that make him seem very lucky. For those of you not old enough to remember, around 3,000 years ago, Winamp was essentially a media player plus community that was used to listen to music. Here's the deal. Winamp was purchased by AOL in June 1999 for $80 million in stock and became a subsidiary of AOL. Now, today you might think of AOL as pretty unimportant company with a shitty email interface. Think again. Back then, AOL, also known as America Online, was the big swinging of big tech. They were FANG before it was cool.
The easiest just got easier. It's easy to install and easy to get started.
Everyone I know is on it. Email.
And there he was. Chamath found himself at the center of big tech, doing exceptionally well and becoming the company's youngest vice president. To non-US residents, a VP has nothing to do with Trump or Obama. Much rather, it's a senior level executive in an organization who reports directly to the CEO. So pretty high up. But in 2005, he left AOL with a number of important learnings.
The takeaway from that were two things. One, most people at most companies are really shit. And that was manifested in large degree at AOL. So I learned all the things not to do. One, and that was probably 90% of my learnings, to be quite honest with you. And then 10% was reinforcing some things that I learned at Winamp, which is really about core product value and what it means to sort of create a real connection with someone.
AOL provided him with a prestigious company brand name on his CV that he could leverage for his next career steps. We don't know if Chamath made significant money exiting AOL, but it doesn't matter anyways, as any amount of money he made so far couldn't compare to what he would make next. But before we talk about how Chamath became a billionaire overnight, I want to thank the Daily Upside for partnering with me on this video. Essentially, they are a bit like Kevin John videos, but in the form of a newsletter. Why? The Daily Upside is a free business and investing newsletter that over 250,000 people subscribe to. And instead of pushing clickbait, financial headlines and biased coverage that traditional outlets have gotten used to, the Daily Upside provides insights that are actually actionable. Every weekday they deliver a morning brief followed by more detailed stories that cover anywhere from the state of Wall Street to corporate M&A. The Daily Upside was founded by a team of former investment bankers, which is an industry we do like on this channel. I started reading the Daily Upside a couple of months ago when it was suggested by another YouTuber I subscribe to. And the emails are an enjoyable read when you have some downtime in between tasks. Click the link in my bio and join the 250,000 other people that read the Daily Upside every morning. It's free, and if you don't love it, you can always unsubscribe. Before making his big move, Chamath joined Mayfield Fund, back then a firm comparable in status to Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz. They are still around today, but nobody really gives a damn outside of a small circle of OGs. Their prestigious history today is a bit like the shy guy at the party who works for Renaissance Technologies. If only they knew that you are working for the most successful hedge fund that averaged a 71.8% annual return before fees from 1994 through 2014. Yeah, but they don't know. And you're staying a virgin for now. But it gets much better. Chamath was still on a lucky strike. His spider senses told him that Mayfield might not be the thing to get him on top of the world effectively.
So my entire goal now is to be in a position to aggregate enough of the capital of the world to then reallocate it against my worldview.
So he decided to join a small and upcoming 1-year-old startup. Facebook. God damn! At Facebook, Chamath focused on 3 things. Maintaining his relationship with Mark Zuckerberg, whom he knew from an AOL deal. Fostering user growth by leading an internal growth team. And making his subordinates cry. Sigma move. And what a Sigma he was. Under his charge, Facebook's monthly user count grew by more than 150-fold. From 5.5 million in 2005 to 845 million by the end of 2011. Funnily enough, later he accused the social media platform of ripping apart society.
The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works.
He also pioneered one of the nowadays most prestigious career positions in startups and tech. Growth.
Most people, when they think about growth, they think it's this convoluted thing where you're trying to generate these, extra normal behaviors in people. And that's not what it's about. What it's about is a very simple, elegant understanding of product value and consumer behavior.
The genius was that Chamath and his team managed to condense the secret for Facebook's success and the reason people love to use and come back to Facebook into one single formula.
After all the testing, all the iterating, all of this stuff, you know what the single biggest thing we realized? Get any individual to 7 friends in 10 days.
And what was the reward? After Facebook went public in 2012, Palihapitiya's equity in the company was estimated to be worth close to, wait for it, $1 billion. Talk about securing the bag.
I want the money.
It turns out that Chamath chose the right jobs exactly at the right time 2 times and took advantage of the career path that is most likely to make you a multi-millionaire statistically, which I might make a video about in the future. Joining a future unicorn. But Chamath was not done. He still had much bigger fish to fry.
I want to be this mega compounder swashbuckling around trying to do really cool shit in the world.
In 2011, he left Facebook and started his own fund, Social Capital, with his then wife. But here is where the meteor changed its trajectory, and things started getting difficult. Suppose you have a net worth of around 1 billion. What do? You want to invest and grow it, but investing with all your own money is risky. So, you raise a fund. You put some of your own money into it as a proof that you have skin in the game, and you raise a shit ton of money more by external investors. In 2011, Chamath did just that with social capital. Through the fund, he invested in a number of companies, including Yammer by his bestie buddy David Sachs, an absolutely based SaaS investor, Slack, and Box. As of 2015, the fund had more than 1.1 billion in total assets, most of which came from external investors, so-called LPs. The fund was supposed to do a couple of things differently.
What I would like us to evolve to is something that looks more akin to, Berkshire Hathaway and the Peace Corps.
Essentially, the whole thing collapsed. Most of the partners, the most important leadership of the fund, left the firm. Why is not completely clear, but supposedly Chamath wanted to run social capital exactly like he wanted to, which was different from the initial mission that most of his partners signed up to.
I think Chamath is kind of the master of his own domain.
Yeah.
So he's like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so
he wanted to do something else.
Yeah, and that's I think we all respect him for that, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
So you guys are on speaking terms, you're friendly. It's not a disaster. I mean, it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
Right.
Also, he came right out of a divorce and was supposedly spending a bit too much quality time with his newfound love in Italy, not returning phone calls and canceling a lot of investor meetings last minute.
How hard do you work? Like how much do you work?
I mean, it's pretty brutal. Right now, we're in a really intense period.
Today, Chamath manages social capital as an independent technology holding with his own money, essentially a family office. He employs a very long-term view and wants social capital to be similar to Berkshire Hathaway, which owns businesses and holds billion-dollar stakes in companies like Apple and Coca-Cola, which also means we have not seen any major game changers or big moves from social capital in the past years. Except for his SPACs. SPACs are blank check companies which raise a bunch of cash, go public and then merge with companies they buy. This series of steps allows a private firm to go public without the strenuous work of all the due diligence that goes along with a traditional IPO. Less due diligence. What could go wrong? Chamath participated in a total of 14 SPACs in the past years, which led to some people calling him the king of SPACs. There's two minor details you should know about his SPACs. Firstly, the performance has been quite bad. For example, let's take a look at 4 of his recent deals.
Chamath Palihapitiya's 4 blockbuster SPAC mergers have tumbled 32% this year as investors ditch flashy growth stocks.
Is a big underperformer, an SEC investigation weighing on that stock, down more than 40% this year.
And yes, you heard that right. One of his companies was under investigation by the SEC.
In early February, when GameStop was still going on, one of Chamath's most hyped spikes was given notice of an SEC investigation, as well as probes by the Justice Department for possible fraudulent business behavior.
This led to many retail investors losing trust and money, while Palihapitiya made $408 million from the promotes of his 2 SPAC deals last year, according to SPAC research data. Here is a very awkward exchange about how much money he made on one of his most controversial SPACs, Clover Health.
5 or 6% of the business, that's it.
Yeah. Now, from my perspective, I think that's a wonderful... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just think what I'm trying to get across is
there's no warrants. There's no warrants or other preferreds that would get you to a higher percentage of the company.
Again, this is all on a fully loaded basis. So,
a Harvard study points out all the issues related to SPACs, most of which are being borne by the retail investors, while the so-called sponsors like Chamath get a sizable stake in the company for free. Today, Chamath takes pride in a few things. His humble upbringing, which he does not fail to mention at any point.
My dad was unemployed for long stretches of time. My mom was a sole breadwinner. She was a housekeeper, then she was a nurse's aide.
His view that the markets are about to crash.
And I exited a ton of positions. All my pipes, my third-party pipes, I basically sold off except for one.
And generally not giving a about what other people think about him.
Nobody cares about. Let's be honest. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay.
Look, human rights issues are incredibly important, and his comments about Uyghurs in China are definitely off. Full stop. However, it's easy to say, what a terrible person, he's not caring about the Uyghurs. What a bad person, retail investors lost money on his SPACs. But we need to ask ourselves, in his position, would we really act differently? If you watching this video now log off and make a negative statement about China on Twitter, nothing happens. For guys like Chamath, millions of US dollar economic interest might be tied to statements like this. This doesn't make it better, but it's just something to keep in mind. And let's not also forget that the media is quick to turn up the rage meter to 99. They love a good scandal, which means we need to critically evaluate information we consume. Essentially, things are never just black or white. There's pros and there's cons to every person. But please rest assured, getting to over $1 billion of net worth in assets and staying there takes more than a bit of luck. And this leaves us with a final question. We are all incredibly driven people on this channel, and while we deeply respect Chamath's achievements in his early years, the last years seemed like a bit of a stagnation to external observers. Will he choose the family life, wearing cashmere sweaters and drinking wine with his partner Natalie in Italy? Or will he attack once more? Another aggressive push in order to radically increase his net worth.
To aggregate enough of the capital of the world to then reallocate it against my worldview.
No matter what, we'll be watching your next steps, Chamath. And thanks to the Daily Upside for sponsoring this video. By the way, people say I'm not a billionaire. Chamath is richer, more powerful, more famous startup investor. But there's one area where I beat this guy. My pants color.